Hey, what's going on, everybody? Long time no see. The herd is alive and well. We are on small square bales right now, and the pasture is starting to look like a feed lot. We're finally starting to green up. A lot of manure everywhere. Man, I cannot wait until the cows move off of this 2.5 acre pasture and get ready for calving. And then I'm gonna take my new drag harrow that I bought this year. I'm gonna drag harrow the S out of this pasture, break up all this manure that's been building up all winter, all of this leftover hay, everything. And then we're gonna be off this two and a half acres for quite a while. They're not gonna graze this until, shoot, I don't even know if they're gonna get to it this summer, but we'll get to that. Calving is gonna be coming up at the very first part of May. First part of May is my first, actually right behind me here, old Big Mama. Big Ab. Oh, she's looking big, isn't she? She's gonna be due here first part of May, like May 1st, May 2nd, I think. And then the only other cow that was successfully bred this year will be about 20 days later. So only 2 calves this year, and they're gonna be spread out a little bit, but we got some time. So that brings me to this video. I'm gonna roll a bunch of footage of last year's calving, and I'm just gonna kind of voice over, talk about this year's calving. So if you stick with me for 1 second here, I'll get rolling on last year's calving footage, and I'll talk about what we got planned for this year's calving. And yeah, we'll see you guys in a bit. Mama, you're so big. Let me guess, another black bull calf. That's my call. I'm calling her right now. This will be number 3 for her. 3 for 3 on black bull calves. This is the other girl we got calving this year, number 3. And I'm gonna call it on her another black heifer calf. So she's gonna be 4 for 4 on black heifer calves, if I were a betting man. All right, first up is actually number 3, who I was just showing you guys. And she's first every year because she has those heifer calves. Heifer calves always seem to be born early. And this video was sent to me from my mom. I was actually on shift the day that this heifer was born. And this is about 2.5, 3 hours after she'd hit the ground. You can see how well that calf is moving around. Also take note of how big mama's bag is. That's a really good indicator when you're watching your cows as they're getting close to calving. They drop that milk and that bag really fills out, gets really tight. So I wasn't able to get this girl tagged because by the time I got home the next day, she was way too spry. To include this video, just to show you guys another sign to look for, you can see the herd was all together up there, except for number 2. She's laying off by herself. This is a really good indicator that she's getting close to getting ready to calve. So this is that little black heifer calf a few days after she was born. And I had elected not to tag her simply because you can see how well she's doing. Like I said, she was like this the next morning when I got home from work, and quite frankly, to catch her and get a tag in her ear placed correctly, it was going to be pretty stressful for her. And I knew that I was going to know who she was. There really was no reason to get her tagged right away. And if I needed to, just wait till she gets a little bit older and run her through the chute system. So, oh, throwback to chickens. Man, I do miss having egg layers around. They were always a riot to hang out with. And clearly they were curious with the new calf on the ground. All right, next up we have number 2, and you can see she's obviously starting that pre-birthing process. That tail sticking straight up. There's actually like a mucus plug pre-birth on the ground kind of by her, in between her front and back hooves there. She's sniffing at it right now. She's looking back at her tail. She knows that she's getting ready to have birth, and that's actually her calf from last year in front of her. And he had a ton of interest in what was going on, which brings up a good point. You know, the whole herd always comes down when a cow is, at least with my herd, when a cow is in labor, like you can see here. The first couple years I had the girls out here, I actually separated them, but putting them all back together in the herd after a week or so just caused problems with them having to reestablish the pecking order in the herd. So in the last couple years, I've just put the entire herd in the calving pasture when I know that the girls are getting ready to calve. So you can see some hooves sticking out there. You know, you always want to look, if you're observing your animals, you always want to look for the front feet, the front hooves,
and a nose sticking out, because that's what should be coming through first. And I can't remember how long it took for her to actually drop this bull calf on the ground. Number 2 here has always been kind of a bit of a difficult labor cow. It was long enough that I started exploring my options, started thinking about what it was going to take if I had to assist. And I actually decided to leave her alone. And by the time I got up to the house to get my emergency calving kit in the Ranger, I grabbed a pair of binoculars and she had actually dropped that calf on the ground. All right, real quick before we start rolling footage of number 1's calving, I'm just going to kind of play some general footage here of these 2 calves that we had on the ground at this point and talk about this year's calving season, why we do what we do out here, and kind of some thoughts that I have going into this year's breeding season. So first, some of you guys are aware, but we AI everything out here on the ranch, and that simply is because I don't own enough acres to justify keeping a bull. So I'm going to have to keep the herd separated. Dexter heifers mature very early, so 8-9 months of age, those heifers technically can be breeding, and because I choose not to breed those heifers until they are at least 2 years old out here, I can't run the cow herd with my bull 100% of the time. That bull is only going to be turned out during that specific breeding season, that breeding window. So that means that if I own a bull out here, he's going to be kept in confinement the majority of the time, and I'm just not willing to do that. Another big reason is because via AI, I can interject some really high quality genetics into my herd. I do love the bull calves and the steer calves that we end up having out here, but at the end of the day, the sire that I use for my herd is top notch. I mean, he is award winning, just something that I'm not going to be able to produce myself, or quite frankly, afford if I actually wanted that live animal out here. So by using AI, by being able to kind of shop around for the traits of that sire that I want to interject into my herd, there's no better way to do that than artificial insemination. So real quick too, if anyone has any questions about a lot of the breeding information that I rely on, I'm a big fan of the Missouri beef reproduction, and particularly Jordan Thomas. They put out a lot of really high quality content, both stuff that you can listen to with podcasts and things that you can find, articles that you can find to read online. So I encourage anyone who's interested in being the best they can be at reproduction for their herd to check out Missouri Beef Repro. So let's talk about this year's breeding schedule. So breeding in 2024, one of the things I'm kicking around is actually breeding later. I'm on the books right now with my breeder for, July, right around the first, second week of July, which is pretty typical for me. But one of the things I've really been exploring is possibly pushing that breeding back until August. And this does a few things for me. By pushing the breeding date back a month, that means that now my calving date is pushed back a month. And so this is a positive in my mind, because now those calves are going to start hitting the ground right around June 1st. That means that the girls will have half of April and all of May to really graze that fresh grass, put on as much body condition as possible before they actually start calving. The system, the way I'm doing it now, if the girls take on their first breeding attempt, they really only have, 2.5 weeks worth of quality grazing before they start to drop calves on the ground. And that's if the weather cooperates and we actually start grazing around April 15th. So there really just isn't a whole lot of time for them to be eating fresh grass and put on a lot of condition before those calves hit the ground coming off of hay. And coming off of hay is actually a good point to bring up, because it takes about 2 weeks for the rumen microbes to adjust to a new feedstuff. So being fed hay all winter and then all of a sudden grazing spring grass, there actually is going to be about a 2-week window that they're just not gaining weight. And in fact, they could be losing weight because that rumen hasn't adjusted yet. All right, switching gears real quick. While I roll this footage of number one having her calf here, I just wanted to bring up that I actually thought that this was going to be her third red bull calf because she's thrown two before this, mainly because she was so late. She was so far behind on her calving date. It was actually at the point that I was reaching out to my uncle and my neighbors and even my vet, asking them like how at what point do you start getting worried? I cannot remember. I don't have my information in front of me. I can't remember how far behind her estimated calving date she was, but it was a decent amount of time. So obviously there was no problems there. She's going to end up having the calf regardless. I mean, she had given me no indication during the summer and fall and winter that she had slipped a calf, that she was open, she wasn't coming back into heat. So I knew she was pregnant, and she was starting to show some of those signs closer to calving. But I feel like those typical signs of like dropping her milk, getting a big bag going, kind of starting to act a little agitated, had been going on for days and days and days. So just something of note there that even if they are well behind their calving date, it's okay, and that this ended up being a red heifer. So I assumed it was going to be a red bull because of how far she was behind, and she wasn't early, but ended up being a heifer. All right, let's get back on track here. So the point that I was trying to make is that by giving them the most time possible to be back on quality forage, get healthy before they calve, just means that they're going to be even healthier when it comes time to breed that following year. And again, AI is very labor intensive and it is expensive. So giving myself the best opportunity to not only get pregnant, but have them actually get successfully bred on their first attempt is huge. And that brings up the one negative about pushing that breeding date back, is because if they are not successfully bred on their first attempt, now we are pushing it back another 21 days. And I really try and keep like a 42-day calving window, a 42-day breeding schedule. But if I wanted to give them a third attempt, we're getting so late into the year now that the following year when they have those calves, they're going to be dropping those calves, in the middle of summer. And so the forage isn't going to be good for their peak lactation. It's going to be hot. We're going to have a lot of fly pressure with those new calves on the ground. So it is kind of a gamble waiting that late to breed, because if they aren't successfully bred the first time, now we've pushed it back even later into the year to give them a second attempt, possibly even a third attempt. So if I do choose to keep my breeding date the same, thus keeping my calving date in 2025 the same, one thing I am exploring this year that I actually think I'm going to do it is planting that 2-acre farm field next door into winter annuals. So I'm going to be doing summer annuals again this year. The herd's going to go onto that in July. That's going to help the steers get finished before they go to the processor. But instead of leaving them on there, going into September, October, I'm actually going to pull them off in September, disc that field up, plant it down to winter annuals. And so next year, during that middle of March, April timeframe where the pastures haven't greened up enough, they're not ready to graze, but I want to get condition on those girls before they start calving in May, I can put them on this winter annual field with hopefully a lot of really high quality green forage, and those girls can start putting on that condition. They can start kind of adjusting that rumen. I'll continue to supplement with hay. So this will also help when it comes time to full-blown spring turnout. Now the girls are back on the perennial pasture. I'm not really going to have that 2-week window of the microbe adjustment, the really runny manure, the loose manure, the losing condition, especially while they're lactating with new calves. They're going to kind of have spent that in-between time on that winter annual field while being supplemented with hay, making that adjustment. So that's it for this video, guys. I just kind of wanted to touch on a few things and roll that footage from last year. I will be doing more calving videos, not only as we get closer to calving, but obviously once those calves actually start hitting the ground. I'll make sure to keep you guys informed and provide you with a lot of good information, I hope. So any questions, comments, concerns, sarcastic remarks, anything you guys saw in this video, anything you want specific information on when it comes to calving, go ahead and comment down below. Let me know. Like I said, I always keep track of all that. I always try and keep in touch with you guys, and I'll make sure to try and cover those topics, answer those questions for you when the 2024 calves start hitting the ground. So hope everyone's doing good, and we'll talk to you later.